The first day at a new school is never easy. For Ethan, it felt less like walking into a building and more like stepping into an entire world already in motion, one where he didn't yet belong. The halls buzzed with chatter. The metallic clanging of lockers opening and slamming shut echoed down the corridor like 100 overlapping drum beats. Sneakers squeaked against the polished floors. Laughter spilled from every corner. Small clusters of kids leaning against lockers, swapping stories from the summer, shouting names across the hall. Everyone seemed to know one another. Everyone except him. Ethan gripped the straps of his backpack so tightly that his knuckles paled, his fingers stiff with nerves. He kept his head down, as though eye contact might make him crumble on the spot. His throat was dry, and each step sent a new twist through his stomach, not unlike the sharp dip of a roller coaster that kept dropping before he could catch his breath. His mother's words repeated in his head like a mantra. "You'll be fine, sweetheart. Just breathe. Everyone feels nervous the first day. Just breathe," he told himself. In, out, in, out. But his lungs never seemed to fill completely. He slowed when he reached the classrooms at the end of the hall, glancing nervously at the door numbers. Room 104. He finally spotted it, the white digits gleaming against this small metal plaque. He stopped, hovering in front of the door like it was a gatekeeper to an unknown life. Through the thin crack between the door and the frame, he could hear voices. The kind of voices that were filled with energy, laughter, and belonging. A chorus of kids who already fit together like puzzle pieces. And he wasn't one of them. For a moment, Ethan thought about turning back. He imagined hiding in the bathroom until the final bell rang, maybe wandering the halls pretending he was lost. Maybe he could even go home early, slip into his room, and pretend the whole day had never happened. But then he thought of his mum again, the way she had crouched down in front of him that morning, smoothing out the wrinkles in his shirt, the way her eyes had been so sure, even as she saw his own doubt. "You're braver than you think," she had whispered, kissing his forehead. So, with a deep breath that caught in his throat, Ethan pushed the door open. The classroom was alive in a way that felt overwhelming. 25 students filled the space, sprawled across neat rows of desks. They leaned across the aisles to whisper, traded jokes under their breath, or flecked folded paper toward friends. The walls were plastered with colorful posters, multiplication tables, motivational quotes, a world map. No one noticed him at first. He could almost slip into the room invisibly. But then, a voice rang out. "Ah, you must be Ethan. Mrs. Alvarez." She stood near the front of the classroom, a tall woman with warm eyes and a kind smile that instantly softened some of his fear. She set down a stack of papers in her hand and gave him her full attention. "Welcome. We're glad you're here." Her tone was gentle, but her words drew attention. Heads began to turn. Curious eyes lifted from notebooks. A ripple of interest passed through the room. Ethan's cheeks burned under their gaze. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "Hi." Mrs. Alvarez gestured toward the back row. "There's an empty seat in the back, next to Liam." Ethan followed her pointing hand. His stomach tightened again when he saw who she meant. The boy in the last row looked about his age, maybe a little taller, with sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. He leaned back in his chair with an easy confidence, tapping the edge of his desk rhythmically with a pencil, as if he had his own soundtrack playing in his head. His posture was relaxed, almost effortless, but when his eyes lifted to meet Ethan's, they were sharp and bright. Something about the look felt familiar. Ethan shook the thought away, gripping the strap of his backpack tighter as he made his way to the desk. Sliding into the seat, he cleared his throat, glancing sideways. Hey." The boy turned toward him fully now, flashing a grin that seemed both mischievous and inviting. The kind of grin that made you want to grin back, even if you weren't in the mood. "Okay, what's up? What's up, dude?" "Hey, I'm Liam." "I'm Liam." "Ethan," he replied quietly. And just like that, there was a spark. Subtle, almost invisible but undeniable. Ethan couldn't place it. It was like recognizing a voice in the dark, or remembering a song you'd once heard but couldn't name. Mrs. Alvarez's voice pulled his attention back to the front as she began the lesson. Words filled the air, instructions, topics, plans for the year ahead. But Ethan struggled to focus. His eyes drifted sideways again and again. The crooked smile Liam wore, the little doodles he sketched in the corner of his notebook, the steady rhythm of his pencil tap, a rhythm that strangely matched the one Ethan himself often tapped when bored or anxious. Each detail tugged at something inside Ethan, something unexplainable. He didn't know it then, but the empty seat beside Liam had never been meant to stay empty. The rest of that morning passed in a blur for Ethan. Mrs. Alvarez's voice carried through the classroom. Instructions about notebooks, the year's reading list, a quick rundown of what subjects they'd cover. She moved with ease, writing neatly on the whiteboard as if she'd done this 100 times before. But Ethan barely absorbed any of it. His mind kept wandering back to the boy sitting beside him. Liam. From the corner of his eye, Ethan watched the way Liam leaned back in his chair, effortlessly comfortable in his own skin. His handwriting was quick, slanted, a little messy but confident. Every now and then, he muttered something under his breath. A quiet joke, a comment about what was written on the board. When he did, the kids in front of him would stifle laughter. Ethan wasn't sure whether to be impressed or intimidated. At one point, Liam noticed him glancing. He tilted his head, flashing that same crooked grin, and whispered, "She always gives the long speech on the first day. By Friday, she won't even remember half of this list." Ethan's lips twitched into the beginning of a smile, before he quickly looked away. He wasn't used to kids noticing him, let alone talking to him on the first day. When the bell finally rang for recess, the classroom erupted with noise. Chairs scraped against the floor. Kids jostled one another on their way to the door. Ethan lingered, unsure whether he should follow or wait. Liam, however, hopped out of his seat and turned back. "Come on," he said simply, like it wasn't even a question. Ethan blinked. "What?" "Recess," Liam replied, slinging his backpack casually over one shoulder. "You coming? Or not?" There was no judgment in his tone, just an easy expectation. As if of course Ethan would come. As if of course Ethan belonged. So he followed. The schoolyard stretched wide under the midday sun, alive with the noise of kids scattering into groups. Some sprinted toward the basketball court, others gathered around the swings or monkey bars. A few stayed close to the shade of the building, chatting in small circles. Ethan hesitated near the edge of the yard, unsure where to go. But Liam walked straight toward the blacktop, where a group of boys were already bouncing a basketball between them. "Liam, you playing?" one of them called. "Yeah," Liam answered with a grin, then glanced back at Ethan. "You play?" Ethan shifted on his feet. Kind of." "Good enough," Liam said. He tossed the ball once in his hands before passing it to Ethan. "You're on my team." Ethan froze with the ball pressed against his chest. The group of boys watched him, some curious, some impatient. His face warmed under their stares. "I'm not really," he began, but Liam cut him off. "You'll be fine. Just pass to me if you get stuck." Something about Liam's tone made it impossible to argue. Confident, but not unkind. Like he had already decided Ethan was worth backing up. So Ethan nodded and stepped onto the cracked lines of the court. The game began, and though Ethan fumbled at first, dribbling too high, missing a pass, Liam never let him sink into embarrassment. Every time Ethan hesitated, Liam was there. "Nice try. Pass again. You got this." When Ethan managed to get the ball through the hoop on his second attempt, Liam clapped him on the shoulder, like it was the most natural thing in the world. For the first time that day, Ethan felt his chest loosen. A laugh even slipped out before he realized it. By the time the bell rang to end recess, sweat clung to his forehead, but the nervous tightness in his stomach had eased. He followed Liam back inside, almost forgetting the dread that had gripped him earlier. As they sat down again at their desks, Ethan glanced sideways at Liam. The boy's grin hadn't faded, his energy radiating like sunlight. And that's when it struck Ethan again, that strange sense of familiarity. It wasn't just that Liam was friendly. It wasn't just that he had pulled Ethan into the game or offered him an easy seat at his side. It was something deeper. The way Liam's grin curved, the rhythm of his laugh, even the way his hair curled slightly at the ends. Ethan couldn't name it, but it tugged at him, insistent and unsettling, like a door creaking open inside his memory, revealing something he had forgotten. By the time lunch rolled around, Ethan felt less like a shadow and more like, well, a person who might actually exist in this new place. He carried his tray through the noisy cafeteria, weaving between crowded tables where kids laughed and shouted over one another. The smell of pizza, fries, and spilled juice hung in the air. He hesitated, unsure where to sit. That familiar fear of being the kid left standing in the middle, rejected from every group. But before the anxiety could rise too high, a voice called out, "Ethan! Over here!" It was Liam. He was already seated at a long table near the window, surrounded by a few other kids from their class. He waved Ethan over with such casual confidence that the other kids instinctively made room, scooting their trays aside. Relief washed over Ethan as he slid onto the bench. "Thanks," he muttered, setting down his tray. "No problem," Liam said through a mouthful of pizza. Then, grinning, he nudged the carton of chocolate milk on his tray toward Ethan. "You like this? They always run out, so I grabbed an extra." Ethan blinked. Yeah, thanks." He opened it, sipping carefully, all the while sneaking glances at Liam. The easy way he spoke, the way he dominated the space without trying, it was the opposite of how Ethan felt. But that wasn't what unsettled him most. It was the little things. The way Liam tapped his fingers on the table, in a rhythm that matched the beat Ethan often found himself drumming when he was nervous. The way he tilted his head slightly when listening, the exact same angle Ethan saw in photos of himself. Even the shape of his grin, sharp and lopsided, tugged at something deep in Ethan's chest. Why does he seem so familiar? The conversation at the table swirled around him. Kids trading stories about their summers, trips to the beach, family road trips, video game marathons. Liam's voice carried through it all, animated as he told some wild tale about his cousin's disastrous attempt at building a treehouse. Everyone laughed, even Ethan. And yet, under the laughter, Ethan's thoughts churned. At one point, Liam caught him staring. "What?" Liam asked, eyebrows raised, though his smile softened the question. Ethan quickly shook his head. "Nothing. Just, you remind me of someone, I guess." Liam leaned back a little, curious. "Yeah? Who?" Ethan hesitated. His chest tightened with the weight of unspoken words. "I don't know. Just someone." Liam studied him for a moment longer, before shrugging, turning back to his friends. But that grin lingered, like he'd tucked Ethan's answer away in his mind. The rest of lunch blurred by. When the bell rang and everyone scattered, Ethan followed the flow of kids back to class, his mind caught on that thought he couldn't shake. Liam wasn't just friendly, he wasn't just fun. He was familiar. Too familiar. It was like looking in a mirror that wasn't quite right. The same features, just arranged differently. Echoes of something Ethan had never known, but felt in his bones. And deep down, in a place he rarely let himself touch, a question began to form. One that made his breath catch whenever he got too close to it. Could it be possible that Liam is more than just another boy in class? The days that followed slipped into a rhythm, but for Ethan, that rhythm was strange, almost uncanny. Every morning, he found himself sliding into the seat beside Liam, and every morning, it felt easy. Too easy, like they'd always sat together, like this wasn't new at all. But the more time Ethan spent with Liam, the more unsettled he became. Because the similarities were piling up. It started small. Both of them doodled in the margins of their notebooks when bored. But not just any doodles. The same kind. Jagged little stars, stick figures holding swords, the occasional spaceship blasting off into scribbled galaxies. Then there was the way they tapped their pencils in class, each in the same syncopated rhythm. Once, during math, Liam started drumming absent-mindedly against the desk. Ethan, without even realizing it, matched the beat. The sound merged seamlessly, And when Liam glanced over with a surprised grin, Ethan's stomach dropped. Coincidence, he told himself. Just coincidence. But the coincidences didn't stop. One afternoon in gym class, the coach barked out, "Partners for sit-ups!" Ethan froze, scanning the room nervously. He'd been dreading moments like this, the scramble to find someone before you were left standing alone. Before the panic could build, Liam called out across the room, "Ethan, over here!" They dropped onto the mats facing one another. Liam held his ankles while Ethan struggled through the exercise. Halfway through, Ethan groaned, flopping back dramatically. "I can't," he muttered. "Yes, you can," Liam shot back. "Don't quit on me." There was something in Liam's voice, firm, but not harsh. Familiar, even. It reminded Ethan of his mum on tough days, when she pushed him to keep trying. He sat up again, teeth clenched, pushing through the burn in his stomach muscles. Liam grinned, as if he'd known all along Ethan could do it. Later, in the locker room, one of the boys laughed at Ethan's scuffed sneakers. "What are those hand-me-downs from your grandpa?" Ethan's chest tightened, words catching in his throat. But before he could respond, Liam cut in sharply. "Shut up, Ryan. His shoes are fine." The other boy rolled his eyes and backed off. Ethan blinked at Liam, stunned. "Why'd you—" he started. Liam shrugged, like it was nothing. "And that's why he sounds out freeze." "No, I saw you." The word friend sent a strange warmth through Ethan's chest, mixed with something heavier, more complicated. That night at home, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his math homework spread before him, his pencil tapping restlessly. His mum bustled around the stove, the smell of spaghetti filling the room. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked without turning around. Ethan hesitated, staring at the page in front of him. "Yeah, there's this kid at school." Her back stiffened slightly, though her voice stayed casual. "Oh, what about him?" "He's nice, I guess." Ethan chewed on the inside of his cheek. "But he feels, I don't know, familiar. Like I already know him somehow." His mum turned then, wooden spoon in hand, her brow furrowed. "Familiar, yeah." Ethan's voice dropped lower. Almost like he could be family. The spoon hovered above the pot for a moment, before she set it down carefully. Her face was calm, but her eyes flickered, just enough for Ethan to notice. She walked over, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes we meet people who just click with us. Doesn't always mean anything big, just means you're lucky to have found a good friend." Ethan nodded slowly, but her words didn't erase the suspicion gnawing at him, because beneath her calm tone, he had caught something. A pause. A flicker. As if she knew more than she was saying. And for the first time, the thought hit him hard, with weight he couldn't ignore. What if Liam isn't just a friend? What if he's something more? The next week, the air grew cooler. Autumn had begun its slow arrival, bringing crisp mornings and afternoons tinted with gold. The maple trees along the playground edges started shedding leaves, scattering reds and yellows across the blacktop, like confetti. Ethan found himself walking home with Liam more often. At first, it happened by accident. Their houses were in the same direction, though Ethan lived a few blocks farther. But soon, it became habit. Liam would wait at the gate after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, grinning when Ethan caught up. They talked as they walked. Not about anything earth-shattering, video games, movies, how much homework Mrs. Alvarez assigned. But gradually, the conversations dug deeper, peeling back layers Ethan rarely shared with anyone. One afternoon, Liam kicked at a pile of leaves, sending them scattering. "So," he said, glancing sideways at Ethan, "who do you live with? You don't really talk about your family much." Ethan hesitated, fingers tightening on the straps of his backpack. "Just my mum, adoptive mum." He said the word adoptive quietly, the way he always did. Most kids didn't understand. Some made it a joke. But Liam didn't laugh. He just nodded, as if he'd expected it somehow. "Cool, so she's your real mum then?" Ethan blinked. "What?" "I mean," Liam continued, his tone matter-of-fact. "She takes care of you, right? Feeds you, listens to your dumb stories, tells you to clean your room." Ethan almost smiled. "Yeah." "Then she's your real mum." Biology doesn't make you family. The word struck Ethan harder than he expected. He stared at Liam, wondering how a kid his age could sound so sure, so steady. They walked in silence for a moment, the sound of their footsteps crunching against the sidewalk. Then Liam spoke again, more softly. My dad left when I was a baby. Don't even remember him. So, it's just been me and my mum. She's pretty awesome though. Works a lot, but still makes time to show up for stuff. Something shifted in Ethan's chest. A single mum. That was another similarity. What's she like? Ethan asked. Liam's grin widened, as if the question lit him up. She's tough, doesn't let anyone walk all over her. And she makes the best pancakes you've ever tasted. He paused, then added, You should come over sometime. She'd like you. Ethan's throat tightened. Nobody had ever invited him like that before. The idea of stepping into Liam's home, of meeting the woman who raised him, filled him with a strange mix of excitement and fear. Maybe, Ethan muttered, though inside he already knew he wanted to. That night, lying in bed, he stared at the ceiling, while memories floated through his mind. Not clear memories. He had no pictures of his biological family, only fragments from his earliest years in foster care. The sound of a lullaby half forgotten, a hand brushing his hair back, a laugh, and suddenly, impossibly, Liam's grin appeared in his thoughts. That crooked smile, the rhythm of his laugh, the glint in his eyes. It was like the fragments of memory were attaching themselves to Liam, filling in blank spaces with startling ease. Ethan sat up, his heart pounding, because the thought he had pushed away all week was now roaring in his chest. What if Liam wasn't just another kid in class? What if Liam was the missing piece? The air outside buzzed with the restless energy that always came at the end of the week, kids spilling out of the building with shouts of freedom. Liam and Ethan walked side by side through the gates, shoulders bumping occasionally, both weighed down with backpacks and the relief of no homework over the weekend. Halfway down the block, Liam slowed. Hey, he said casually, you want to come over? My mum's making lasagna tonight. She makes way too much, and, honestly, it's legendary. Ethan froze mid-step. He wasn't used to invitations like that. Most of the time, he went straight home, where it was just him and his mum. Quiet, predictable, safe. He glanced at Liam, who was already grinning as though the answer was obvious. I don't know, Ethan murmured. Come on, Liam urged, nudging him playfully. It's Friday, no excuses. You'll love it, and my mum will be psyched to meet you. She's been asking why I talked about this new friend all the time. Ethan's chest tightened at the word friend again. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone to text his mum. Liam invited me to his house for dinner. Is that okay? The reply came faster than he expected. Of course, sweetheart. Be polite and have fun. So Ethan found himself walking beside Liam, a little farther than usual, into a neighborhood of tidy houses with wide porches and carefully trimmed lawns. His heart pounded harder with each step. When they reached the door, Liam shoved it open without hesitation, calling, Mom, I'm home. The smell hit Ethan instantly. Rich, savory, warm. Garlic, tomatoes, cheese. His stomach growled. A woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She was tall, with kind eyes and tired lines at the corners of her face that softened when she smiled. There you are, she said, before her gaze landed on Ethan. And you brought a guest? Ethan shifted nervously, clutching the straps of his backpack. Hi, Mum. Liam rolled his eyes. Don't call her ma'am. This is my mum, Julia. Julia laughed, brushing her hands together, before reaching out. It's nice to meet you, Ethan. Liam's told me a lot about you. Ethan blinked. He has? All good things, she assured him, ushering them inside. Dinner's almost ready. Go wash up. The boys scrambled up the stairs to Liam's room, and Ethan paused on the threshold, staring. The room was messy but alive. Posters of comic book heroes on the walls, stacks of books by the window, a baseball glove tossed carelessly on the floor. But what caught Ethan's attention were the little things. On the desk, a row of hand-drawn sketches, spaceships, stick figures with swords, almost identical to the doodles Ethan filled his own notebooks with. Whoa, Ethan murmured. What? Liam asked, flopping onto his bed. Ethan walked closer, picking up one of the sketches. His fingers trembled slightly. Nothing. Just, I draw stuff like this too. Really? Liam's grin spread. See? Told you we're basically the same person. Ethan laughed weakly, but his stomach knotted. The same person. The words rang louder in his head than Liam meant them. Dinner was a blur of warmth. Julia piled their plates high, insisting Ethan eat more, even after he swore he was full. She asked polite questions about school, about his favorite subjects, about what he liked to do for fun. Ethan answered quietly, but she had a way of listening that made him feel safe. Like she wasn't just being polite, like she truly cared. Halfway through dessert, Ethan caught himself staring at the curve of Julia's smile, at the way Liam's laugh mirrored hers perfectly. It was like watching puzzle pieces lock together, pieces he didn't even know were missing. Walking home later, under a sky splattered with stars, Ethan's mind spun. Liam felt familiar. Julia felt familiar. Even this house, the easy warmth of it, tugged at something deep inside him. For the first time, the question he'd been avoiding screamed inside his chest. What if this isn't coincidence? What if Liam isn't just a friend? What if he's my brother? That night, Ethan barely slept. He lay in bed, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through his curtains. The lasagna had been delicious, Julia's kindness disarming, Liam's laughter infectious, and yet none of that was what kept his eyes wide open past midnight. It was the feeling. That strange, unshakable pull. Like he had stepped into a place he somehow already belonged. Like Julia's voice, when she told him to take a second helping, had brushed against a memory lodged deep in his chest. And Liam felt less like a friend and more like someone who had always been there, hiding in plain sight. By morning, Ethan's questions had tangled into a knot he couldn't ignore. At breakfast, his mum bustled around the kitchen, humming as she packed her thermos for work. Ethan stirred his cereal absent-mindedly, appetite gone. Finally, he blurted, "Mum, can I ask you something?" She glanced up. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" He hesitated, gripping his spoon tight. "Do you know anything about my family? My biological family?" The hum of the refrigerator suddenly felt too loud. His mum stilled, her back to him. When she turned, her smile was careful. Too careful. "We've talked about this before," she said gently. "The adoption agency didn't give me much. You were very young, Ethan. Barely 2. There weren't many details, but..." Ethan's throat tightened. "You don't know if I have siblings?" Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. But it was enough. "Ethan," she said softly, sitting down across from him. "You're my son. That's what matters. We've built a life together, haven't we?" He swallowed hard, guilt crashing into him. He loved her. Of course he did. She was his mum, the only one who'd ever been there, through everything. But the hollow ache in his chest refused to disappear. That day at school, he studied Liam with new eyes. The way Liam laughed with his head tilted back, the exact same tilt Ethan caught himself doing sometimes. The way he solved math problems quickly, but absent-mindedly, scribbling answers like Ethan did. Even the scar on his left eyebrow, small, faded, but almost identical to the one Ethan had from falling off his bike years ago. Coincidence? It had to be coincidence, right? At lunch, Liam plopped his tray down next to him. "You look like you saw a ghost," he teased. Ethan forced a smile. "Didn't sleep much." "Same," Liam grinned. "Stayed up late finishing this comic I'm drawing. Want to see?" He pulled out a folded sketchbook, flipping through pages of carefully inked panels. Heroes, battles, impossible landscapes. Ethan stared, stunned. The art style was eerily similar to his own. He flipped to one page, a hero holding a glowing sword. His heart jumped. He had drawn almost the exact same thing in his own notebook at home. "This is crazy," Ethan whispered. "What?" Liam asked. "Nothing," Ethan said quickly, shoving the book back. That night, Ethan couldn't shake it. The coincidences weren't just piling up, they were stacking into something undeniable. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He dug through the box in his closet. The adoption box. Inside were scraps his mom had kept for him, the blanket he was wrapped in when she first held him, a photo of his toddler self in foster care, and a thin envelope of papers from the agency. His hands shook as he sifted through them. Most were legal forms, sterile and cold, but tucked in the back was a single, faded note. It listed his birth date, his given name, and under family history, just a single line. One sibling, male, age 2 years older, name unknown. Ethan froze, the air leaving his lungs. His vision blurred, the words searing into his mind. One sibling, male, 2 years older. Liam. The truth slammed into him with brutal clarity. Liam wasn't just his friend. He wasn't just familiar. He was his brother. Ethan didn't tell anyone right away. The note from the adoption papers burned in his pocket all weekend, the words etched into his memory. One sibling, male, age 2 years older. Liam fit that line like a key fits a lock. And yet Ethan's chest tightened every time he imagined saying it aloud. What if he was wrong? What if Liam laughed? Or worse, what if he pulled away? By Monday morning, Ethan was hollow-eyed from lack of sleep. His mum noticed. "Of course. Rough night again?" she asked, gently, as she buttered toast. "Yeah," Ethan muttered, though he couldn't bring himself to say why. She kissed his forehead before leaving for work, and the guilt gnawed deeper. He hadn't told her what he found in the papers. He didn't even know how. At school, Liam was his usual whirlwind of energy, dropping into the seat next to Ethan with a grin. "Guess what? My mum said you can come over any time. She likes you. Said you're polite. Which is hilarious. 'Cause you're not polite to me at all." Ethan forced a laugh, but inside panic rose. She likes you. Did Julia know? Could she feel it too? That hidden thread tying them together. During math, Ethan caught himself staring again. The shape of Liam's nose, the curl of his hair, the way he chewed on his pencil when he was stuck. All reflections of himself. After class, Liam nudged him. "You've been weird lately. Seriously, what's up? Did I do something?" "No," Ethan blurted. Too fast, too defensive. "Then what?" Ethan's throat closed. He wanted to say it, wanted to rip the truth out of his chest and throw it on the table between them, but fear held him back. So instead, he said, "Nothing, just tired." But Liam didn't look convinced. That evening, Ethan stood outside Liam's house again, invited over for pizza and video games. Julia welcomed him warmly, and as they ate, she asked questions about his life with gentle curiosity. Ethan answered carefully, but every so often he caught her watching him, not unkindly, but with a searching softness that made his skin prickle. Later, in Liam's room, controllers in hand, Ethan's mind spun out of control. The adoption note screamed louder than the blaring explosions on the TV screen. His heart pounded so hard, he could barely focus on the game. Finally, he dropped the controller. "Liam," he said quietly. "Yeah?" Liam glanced over, mid-laugh. Ethan's mouth went dry. He swallowed hard. What if we were related?" Liam blinked, confused. "Like cousins or something?" "More than that." Ethan's voice cracked. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the folded adoption note. His hand shook as he opened it, smoothing the creases. He held it out, forcing himself to breathe. Liam frowned, taking the paper. He read silently, his eyes scanning the line. Then again, and again. The room fell unbearably quiet. When Liam finally looked up, his face was pale, his voice barely a whisper. 2 years older. That's me. Ethan's chest constricted. I think you're my brother. The words hung between them, electric, irreversible. Liam stared. Shock painted across his features. He opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head slowly, like the ground beneath him had shifted. You're serious? Ethan's eyes burned. I didn't know. Not until I found that paper. I didn't know how to tell you. For a long, aching moment, neither of them moved. Then Liam stood, pacing the room, running both hands through his hair. This is insane. You're telling me all this time you've been my... He stopped, words catching in his throat. Ethan waited, every nerve in his body on edge. Finally, Liam turned, his eyes wide and wet with unshed tears. My brother, he finished. The silence after Liam's words stretched so long that Ethan thought he might break under the weight of it. His chest ached, his palms were damp, and all he could think was, please don't hate me. Please don't push me away. But then Liam did something Ethan would never forget. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and pulled Ethan into a hug so fierce it knocked the breath out of him. You're my brother, Liam whispered, his voice trembling. All this time, I had no idea. Ethan's throat closed, tears spilling hot and fast down his cheeks. I didn't either. I swear I didn't. I kept feeling like we were connected, and then I found that paper, and... Shut up, Liam said, laughing through his own tears. You're here. That's what matters. They stood there, clinging to each other, the walls of Liam's messy room fading away. For the first time in Ethan's life, he wasn't wondering or wishing. He wasn't half of something missing. He was whole. When they finally pulled apart, Liam's face was blotchy, his grin shaky but bright. We have to tell her. Oh, what's this? Ethan's heart stuttered. What if she's upset? What if... She won't be. Liam cut in. Trust me, she'll want to know. Together, they walked downstairs, side by side. Julia was in the kitchen, rinsing plates from dinner. She looked up when they entered, eyebrows lifting at their serious expressions. What's going on? She asked gently. Ethan's hands shook as he held out the paper. Julia dried her hands and took it, scanning the faded words. As she read, her face softened, then froze, then shifted into something Ethan couldn't quite name. A mix of shock, sorrow, and wonder. When she finally looked at him, her eyes glistened. Ethan, she whispered. You're... Her voice broke. She pressed a hand to her mouth, steadying herself. You're Liam's brother. Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't know until recently. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. But Julia was already moving toward him, cupping his face in her hands with the same tenderness she gave her own son. Sweetheart, you don't ever need to apologize for existing. You're family. You've always been family, even if we didn't know it until now. Ethan's chest cracked open at those words, and before he knew it, Julia was pulling him into her arms. Liam wrapped around both of them, and for the first time in his life, Ethan felt what a real family hug was. Layered, warm, unshakable. Later, Julia called Ethan's mum. Nervous at first, Ethan listened as the 2 women spoke quietly, their voices filled with cautious joy. Instead of distance, there was understanding. 2 mothers bound by love for the same boy, now learning to weave their families together. That weekend, they all gathered for dinner, Julia's lasagna again, but this time with Ethan's mum at the table too. The air was awkward at first, but then Liam cracked a joke. Julia laughed, Ethan's mum smiled, and something shifted. Barriers crumbled. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel split between 2 worlds. He felt like both halves had finally clicked into place. As the night wound down, Liam elbowed Ethan playfully. Guess you're stuck with me now. Ethan grinned, a warmth blooming deep inside his chest. Best thing that's ever happened to me. They shared a look. Brothers, no longer by accident, but by choice, by truth, by love. And in that moment, Ethan knew. His story wasn't one of loss anymore, it was one of finding. A family found, a family found before the color of life, and a simple set of life. Sometimes life surprises us in the most unexpected ways. For Ethan and Liam, what began as a simple friendship turned into something far greater. A reminder that family isn't always about where you start, but about where your hearts finally meet.